Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right, I think we're all set. So we are, beginning, we covered the 3 higher trainings last week. So everybody's got that nailed, right? Ethics, concentration, wisdom, which is really the 3 categories of the Noble Eightfold Path. So we have this 4 truths: truth of suffering, cause of suffering. There is a cessation, how we can free ourselves. And then the Eightfold Path is how one does free oneself. Within the 8, there's 3 categories: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And so this is really the foundation, as we mentioned last week as a recap. This could just help anyone live a better life if you lived a little more ethically, were more concentrated, mindful, and made some wise choices. Ethics, concentration, wisdom. At whatever level we engage with that, we can improve our life right now, today, and all the way until complete freedom. So it's really just a solid foundation for living. This week, the book's going to go into unpacking like how we can reflect on ethics, what it means to us, how it transforms our lives. And the thing to note with ethics is it doesn't matter what religion, philosophy, belief system, when you go through all the wisdom traditions or even the classics and the Greeks and Aristotle and, my mom, if we're ethical, if we uphold our values, that's the source of happiness and well-being. It's just the way that is. When I do things I don't feel good about, I don't feel good about who I am. When I do things I feel good about, I feel good about who I am. It's very simple and incredibly challenging to do. And so within Buddhism, not only is there the clarity around how much freedom we have living an ethical, meaningful life, but also it is the foundation of all spiritual growth. It's literally the fertilizer that provides the access to the other teachings, to the pieces of wisdom that we get. And it just opens everything. The basic fundamental working principle in Buddhism is that all suffering comes from non-virtue and all happiness from virtue. And then the definition of virtue and non-virtuous is just whether it leads to a good result or an unpleasant result. So it's not like a judgment, like good or bad. It's, well, these things happen, not a good result. You do these things, pretty good result. That's the definition. And there's no one judging. We just kind of notice within our own self that when I engage in these types of behaviors, I have different relationships with people. I have a different relationship with myself. More potentials are open. My mind's more clear. I can meditate more. Like we just naturally start creating different conditions in our lives for well-being and for understanding. Things ripen in particular ways, and there's just so much more opportunity. And before we even get into the text on it, I share my own experience with this. Is I remember going to my early teachings, Geshe Gelsen up there, and to go to these wonderful teachings, this Buddhist center, this High Lama translated from Tibetan to English, and trying to understand what's going on. I went to teachings, first teaching by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like the highest teachings on wisdom. I had no idea what he's talking about. And it's just I'm trying not to fall asleep, and it's just so dense, so much I can't comprehend. And then emptiness and non-dual experience. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But what I did understand is that these people were good role models, how to live life, how to be a good person. And the foundation of that was just, it was worth my time and energy to learn how to engage more mindfully with being a good person, and my life would improve. And so never thought I would get the emptiness thing or all those things. I just figured I'd go here, and these people are nice people. This Lama's an amazing being, super nice, and what an incredible environment to be in. And I'm going to work on being a better person. So I just cultivating the ethics and the meditations, the practice of Lama. And just what happened over time is later, things that made no sense to me at all were very clear to me. Much more clear. I could read something and just kind of like, oh, okay, I get that. I get that. And so as we engage in ethics, what it's like, I relate it to just sort of clearing away the windshield. And so things like non-dual experience and empty nature, things that just seem so ephemeral and so light that, later it's just like, there's some understanding. And it's the ethics that's clearing the way for it. Whereas if you just try to focus on the intellectual aspect of this impermanent, interdependent experience that we're having, and just focus on that without opening the heart and engaging in ethics, it's like pouring water on a rock, like it's just this trapped intellectual, machinations, and but there's no realization, But with ethics, it's like softens everything, and over time, things that once made no sense just start seeming to make some sense, and then we embody it much easier. So ethics really opens the door to a better life in this moment. I feel better about who I am. I don't have anything to hide. I get to look people in the eye, and it's pretty good. So all that's immediate, and then I'm creating different conditions in my life to be around different people in my life, and things change. So one point in my life, just a guy moving to Long Beach, becoming a school teacher. I had no idea I'd meet Geshe Yeltsin. Kind of falls in, let alone meet the Dalai Lama, let alone become a monk. Like these things just start shifting and changing because we're changing, and our interactions change, and different possibilities show up, and a life unfolds. But if I'm still in my self-centered, materialistic worldly view, it'd be pretty hard to be open to hanging out with an old Tibetan Lama. Like, I want to go surfing, man. And do these other things, and so what happens is, things just ripen in different ways for us, and these relationships ripen. We open the door, and so ethics is just so incredibly important, and it's often what gets skipped over. I just want to go to the high teachings. I can't be nice to my neighbor, but I can talk all day about emptiness. There's a big disconnect. I struggled being nice to my neighbor yesterday, actually. I was there for a long time, as he was yelling. I was hanging in there, man. But yeah, yeah. So
You did a great job.
80%. That was pretty good. Could have been just a bit more skillful at the end there. So it's this heart opening piece. So with that introduction, the text is going to have us sort of reflect upon the value of ethics and what it means, and it's this twofold approach in these long-term teachings, they always kind of talk about really spending some time to see what the benefit of something is and seeing the adverse effect if we don't, you know. It's kind of like, if we do this, those are kind of, we do this, these are kind of the results, and we just think about them. So let's go ahead and open the text here. The benefits of ethics, that's where we're at. Hopefully she didn't say something different than I just did, because that gets awkward. So Lamrim texts usually explain the last two trainings, concentration, wisdom, in the context of the advanced level, the grade scope, and elaborate on the training in ethics during the medium scope. Or actually introductory scope, actually. But one of the earlier scopes. So just for context, in the Lamrim text, there's 3 levels of motivation. They talk about scope. So there's kind of the introductory scope, which is a motivation that I would like to live a good life. I'd like to be okay. And I want to ensure a life that would lead to a good next life, right? So this is always in the context in Asian culture where like rebirth's just normal. Like, of course, everybody has multiple lives. That's the way. So in that primary motivation would be, I want to live my life in a way that will give me another good life. In Christian terms, we would think I'd want to live a life where I can go to heaven, kind of thing. You know, like my next life will be good. I'll be in heaven. I want to go to that other place. It's hot. And so same thing, but in Buddhism, it's kind of like, I want another good human life, maybe. You know, they have heaven realms and things. I just want the next. So that's a pretty good motivation. I want to live well. I want to make sure I don't screw up too bad. And I want to kind of, make sure I have a good next life. So that would be the initial scope. Middle scope is where the motivation is to be free of samsara, to be awakened, to be an arhat. And so the first scope has certain practices that would ensure that. Second, or medium scope, is one where they're focused on the practices that liberate one from samsara. Attain nirvana, be a way that people think of that. And great scope, I was speaking of, that would be the bodhisattva path. That would be, not only do I want to be free, I want to complete Buddhahood so that I can be of benefit. I want to free all beings from suffering. Really want to engage in bodhisattva path. I don't want anybody to suffer. I'm in this for everyone. So one of those 3 motivations. So in the, I'm going to say first 1 and 2 scopes, that's where ethics is this big foundation, because it creates everything for anything that follows. So on the benefits of ethics and how to practice it are presented next. So we're going to talk about that now. And then concentration wisdom will come later in part 5. The essence of Buddhist ethics or ethical conduct is refraining from harming others. For our first meditation, we focus on understanding the benefits of ethical conduct, the pros, and the drawbacks of neglecting it, the cons, which will inspire us to practice it. So if you're new, what we do is, these are actual meditations. What we do on our Wednesdays is we unpack them and encourage you to bring these reflections into your day during the week and see how you can work with them. So when your mind's calmer, generate a positive altruistic motivation for doing the meditation. You can think, for example, I'm doing this meditation to gain a better understanding of ethics, so my actions will be solely beneficial and not harmful to others. Then do the practice for the so this instruction, and then reflect on these points here. just as the earth is the foundation of all animate and inanimate things that abide in it and abide on it. Ethics is the foundation of all good qualities and realizations. So really just, spending some time working with that, is this possible? Based on a stable practice of ethical conduct, we will be able to cultivate compassion, loving kindness, calm abiding, special insight, liberation, and all the realizations of the Bodhisattva path up to full enlightenment. On the other hand, if we do not safeguard our ethical conduct, we will be unable to attain any of these. And so that list there, we're looking at cultivating compassion, loving kindness, calm abiding, special insight. So calm abiding would be the concentration, special insight, the wisdom, the freedom, basically everything that will liberate our minds is only possible in this way. And if you just think of it on a conventional level, how are we going to have any of those qualities when I'm self-centered, angry, frustrated, caught up in knots in my mind? It's just not free to do it. So this conduct, this ethical conduct, body, speech, and mind, it's just freeing us. It's freeing us. So there is a real liberation in the ability to have nothing to hide, nothing to feel bad about. Comparing yourself to somebody, you don't have to do any of that. Everybody's here, they're part of this experience, and how do I engage in healthy relationships with others? It's just free. And with that freedom, then, the mind's more free to cultivate concentration, to cultivate insight, and to open the heart up. But as we can see, if I don't do this and I get more self-centered, am I going to be happier? Or am I going to worry more? Am I going to be more attached to things, a little more defensive, worry about what people think about me? Probably. I don't have to worry about any of those. If I, You ever met someone who's just a nice person? I have this guy who's a yearbook salesman. I was the yearbook advisor when I taught high school, and he was the rep. And he was just a nice guy. There's always no problem. How can we help? Never tried to sell you anything. And something would go completely sideways on the project, and whether something got in, let's not worry about who did what. Let's fix it. Like, he was just nice. He was just always just good. Just always nice. Turns out he was an heir to Thomas Jefferson's properties. One of that family had, was it Monticello or something? He had stuff there. You'd never know it. He's just a guy who comes into a low-income school on the border of Compton, North Long Beach, and help you make a yearbook. There's people like that. They're just good people. One day I'm hoping to be one, and I'm aspiring, and so there's just peace around that. There's just a peace around that. Okay, the Buddha said that ethics is like a beautiful ornament. A person with good ethics acts and speaks in a gentle, non-harmful way, and their mind is calm and subdued. Others feel safe, relaxed, and happy around such a person and want to be close to them. But someone who lacks good ethics is the opposite. Their behavior is reckless and harmful. People and even animals mistrust and avoid such a person. Yeah, that's the dead giveaway when your dog doesn't like them. Not always true, but yeah, you do kind of wonder sometimes, why are you growling at that and that? But again, one of the interesting things around our relationships with others, I used to be, really insecure around people and, social, like, events with people and small talk and all that. I'm learning how to live and trying to engage in life as a young adult, and it's just awkward as hell. And what I learned basically was I don't need to be funny or interesting or charismatic. You just got to be nice and interested in people. It's pretty easy to have a conversation. You ask them about themselves, what's important, what you think, and people talk. And what I discovered was, if you're just kind of a nice person and interested in people, you don't have to worry about all those other things, Yeah. And if we're a good friend, you kind of get friends. Kind of interesting like that. And when I'm selfish, self-centered, evaluating everyone based on my judgments, don't have as many friends. So just this aspect of what happens when we're ethical, good friends, or, try to have healthy relationships. You just tend to have more friends, more, connection in life, if you want them. Sometimes they show up even when you don't want them. And you got to talk to them and stuff. It's a whole thing. But, but there is this freedom of, there's a lack of tension, a lack of comparison, and a comfort with engaging with people when we have nothing to hide. Like, wow. What's it like to have nothing to hide? And there's a freedom there, and self-worth, value. Yeah, so such a benefit to living in this way. And when I do have something to hide and I get defensive or whatever, not so good. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. My teacher, Yeshe Yeltsin, he'd always say, not so good. Just always, not so good. So I just brought it, yeah. So, okay, ethics gives rise to happiness, and it is the cause of favorable rebirths and good experiences in our future lives. So there you're back to that initial scope. And it also brings happiness in this life, better relations with others, greater peace of mind, and so on. On the other hand, faulty ethics is the cause of unfortunate rebirths and suffering in future lives, as well as many unwanted problems in our present life. So again, we're just back to this working principle of virtue, good result, non-virtue, not so good result. And that's this working principle of karma in general. Let me see if she says anything about that before I go on about it. So how do we practice ethics? Start by studying karma. That's where I was going to go. Learn to avoid the 10 non-virtues and practice the 10 virtues as much as you can. Keep in mind the golden rule. Don't do to others what you wouldn't want them to do to you, and treat others the way you wish to be treated. If you decide to take refuge and commit yourself to a Buddhist path, you can also take any number of the 5 lay precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying, and taking intoxicants. So those are 5 initial precepts. If someone were to take refuge, kind of formally become a Buddhist, you would generally take these 5. And there are 5 of the 10, basically. So it's kind of funny. You tell you to not do 10, but if you want to be a Buddhist, only 5 of the 10. But the difference is there's a formal commitment. Yeah. In addition, there are several levels of monastic precepts for those serious about dedicating their lives to Dharma practice. taking and keeping precepts is more powerful and virtuous than simply avoiding those actions without precepts. And so that's an interesting point. What's the difference between me promising not to harm others and me just not harming others? And the difference is, they would say with a precept, I'm actively not harming all the time. Like it's an active state of not harming. I have a commitment in head. I'm alert about that. It's actively, like all day long, I'm actively not harming. Whereas without the precept, I might have the chance to harm and I just don't. As opposed to actively committed to and an energy around not harming that I'm aware of all the time. And so that's a different karmic momentum. As opposed to just, I didn't swat that fly. Like I'm on the lookout to not swat a fly or step on an ant or harm. And I'm aware of it. And then back to the karmic imprints, if we go to the definition of virtue and non-virtue, all happiness comes from virtue, all suffering from non-virtue. Some people say you reap what you sow. It's in other traditions, not just Buddhist, right? What goes around comes around, things like that. Karmically, we what we think, say, and do a lot, we have a propensity to think, say, and do a lot more. Become habits. My thinking habits, the way I label people habits, the way I perceive people or defend myself, it just becomes very habitual, and I just kind of think in a certain way. I develop certain habits, and they become they have an inertia, and it's hard to change them. So I'm creating causes for habits of behavior and things. So nothing real magical. A lot of karma is just very straightforward, cause, effect, right? Tend to create habits. They're hard to break. It's like doing a lot. Then there's karma on a different level of this way that we feel and experience pleasure or suffering. And then if we go back to the ethics and creating the conditions to experience pleasure or suffering or something neutral. And then we start wondering, anything that I find pleasurable, there's been conditioning to find something pleasurable. And that would be, from a Buddhist perspective, karmic conditioning and behaviors of potentials, these seeds that have ripened for me to enjoy a glass of water. And so we can experience this with food, with events, with activities. Somebody can get in a car accident and be really upset over it, even though they're okay. But it's this big hassle and a big thing. A lot of mental emotional suffering. Somebody else can get in a car accident, just be real grateful they're alive. It's just a car, right? So they're having a very different experience. I use this all the time. Some people like Brussels sprouts, some people don't. So we start understanding that the phenomena, the events we experience, we're going to have a subjective internal experience from our own side. And from a Buddhist perspective, that's going to be our karma. So there's karma has been created that I have a delicious experience when a Brussels sprout touches my lips. And other people have a very different karma. Like, why would you eat that stuff? Right? And so if we start then understanding karma on this other level of as we engage in ethics and wholesome behavior and good karmic imprints, you're going to find less suffering, less unpleasurable experiences. And the outer experiences don't need to change. For example, people you used to find annoying, you may not find so annoying anymore. It's not as painful to be around them, unless they're your neighbor. And yeah, so like as I change, my experience of others changes, and so I have different experiences with you. And so again, back to ethics, as I engage in these wholesome, compassionate activities with others, I'm going to have a lot less mental, emotional, other types of suffering. It doesn't mean I won't have a car accident. It means that when I have the car accident, I'm not going to suffer as much. Okay? Doesn't mean that I won't be around difficult people at times. I'm just going to be better able to work with those people, right? I'm going to suffer less. And I'm going to find more people pleasant to be around than I used to. And they didn't necessarily change, in a significant way. And so then you get right into the fundamental dynamic of Buddhism, which is an inside job. Right? As a conventional human, self-centered, I'm trying to arrange the world so I can be happy and well. And that's just not the way it works. And that recipe doesn't work very well. And you gotta get lucky a lot. But you can have temporary pleasures and some successes, but they're very fleeting. But if we work on those inner qualities and on wholesome behavior and being a person with compassion and kindness, then I don't need to change all of that. The experience of all of you and the events change. And we ripen and we start seeing this interdependent experience, and that how I'm experiencing you has a lot to do with me. Even the food I eat, the things that happen in my life, more flexible with, and just going to suffer less. And then, of course, it opens the door to all those other potentials of understanding and of compassion, of more clarity in the mind. Because I don't have much to hide or defend or, worry about. It's just this opportunity to cultivate virtue. And then if we can get to that point, and this is why it's so important to spend real time recognizing the benefits in your life, because there's often not a relationship. I was around some fun people today, and I think it's because I was around some fun people today. I don't take the time to think, well, I've been working on myself. I'm a better human being. Some people around me differently, And so our brain has, reward systems and things like that, and they're correlating being around good people with just this sort of event that happened versus, what gave rise to how I experience these things. And it's a much longer cause-effect experience. And so if we're not making that connection, taking time to recognize, wow, I've been working on being a more virtuous, wholesome person and being kind to others for a while now. How's my life different? How's my interactions different? How are things different? And then we can start seeing the result of that in our lives, and then the connections start to form a little better. We see more clearly. But if we don't take time, and that's why it's so easy to go, well, of course, I know I should be a good person. I'd feel better, and that'd be nice. And then it minds on to other things. Like, by the way, there's this apple pie in the refrigerator next door. Just saying, it's pretty big. Nice. Is there rhubarb in there too? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, could be thinking about that. I mean, I'm not. I was just using it as an example. So, and we forget, wow, maybe I should share that with others. How kind that would be. Our mind slips into the worldly concerns very quickly. And so the idea of these practices are to really make time to reflect, to deepen, and to test whether it's true or not, right? Just because we're talking about it's true. I shared some examples in my own life. Doesn't make any of this true. You have to check. Does it make sense? Do you test it? Does it work? Does it work? And then as you apply it in your life and we're mindful of it, then if it is working and it is true, then we can make that connection. And we have a reward system that we're noticing. So these contemplations in the Lam Rim are to like spend a week, okay, well, let me work on non-harming. Let me be aware of how I engage with others. Let me be honest, be kind, be watchful about my words, my conversations, my interactions. And let's not forget to be kind to myself. Because that's the hard one. Oh, God, upset with so-and-so, I didn't do this. Just kind to ourselves. Yeah, we're learning. And then see what happens. And I'm going to pause there, see if anyone has any comments, thoughts, discussion points. May want some pie.
Just a thought. Can you go back to those 5 lay precepts? There's no killing, no sexual misconduct, no intoxicants, no stealing, and there's one other one.
You don't want to lie either.
Don't lie. Okay, good. I think that was an important one. So I'm just curious as to why they focus on those 5 and leave out the device to speech, idle gossip, right view, all those other ones that seem pretty important.
I didn't hand you the microphone. So online, I'm going to repeat, basically, why would they only pick 5 of the 10 if you're entering into Buddhism? And all 10 are, there's a top 10 list that lead to all these struggles and sufferings. The big problems are these top 10.
Like malicious speech seems like a pretty good one to be focusing on. Like don't be a jerk.
Harmful speech, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk should be a good one. We should do a T-shirt. Yeah. I don't know why. I've never really questioned that specifically. What I would say, though, just from experience, is that they really generally, this is not about right and wrong stuff. It's just what causes the most harm to you and others. And so whether they thought those 5 are the most, and then, but often when one takes vows, they don't want you to commit to things that that you can't keep. So, for example, when you get to the mind, like ill will, covetousness, and wrong view, those are going to be pretty hard to keep. Okay, how are you going to maintain right view? How are you going to not have ill will, right? It's probably doable to try not to lie. So that might be a little more doable. Stealing might be a little more doable until you do your taxes, right? That whole honesty thing, or a resume, or an ad for dating, long walks on the beach, whatever we say about ourselves. So these 5, I think there's just me, So take it all with a grain of salt.
Keep it simple.
Like things that are doable. When we're making a commitment, you want them to be things that are doable and are in those top lists. So, try not to have sex out of marriage. Try not to have sex with somebody else's, partner. Things like that. They create harm. We got killing. Yeah, so try not to kill, stealing, honesty, speech, don't lie. Sexual and intoxicants. Intoxicants is where most people get stuck. It's pretty funny. It's whenever Dalai Lama or somebody's taking, refuge vows, and, Yeah. What about can I just have a glass of wine? Like just that one, And so generally they'll say, just take the ones you want. Even she phrased it that way. So if you're not ready to give up intoxicants, don't make it vow to give up intoxicants, right? Just do the 4, right? So I think they're working with things that you could, because you don't want to break precepts in general. Well, ever really. I mean, you wouldn't want to, but versus, the other ones can be more lifelong, in terms of at least the mind. But it seems like harsh speech we want to try to avoid. Divisive speech, that's a really hard one. Idle speech is another hard one. So I think line would be like of those, that might be the easiest, because you're going to have most harsh speech when you're in an elevated state. You're angry. It's hard to have control over those words. That's my speculation. That one's more doable on a long-term committed basis. It's a good question, though. Good thing to pose up. Then we can ask some Tibetan Lama and he'll give a real answer. Hey, Martha.
Hey, John. Hey, everybody. So
Hey.
when somebody said to me a little while back about that she had taken the vows of, I don't know if it was the Bodhisattva or Bodhisattva vows,
Bodhisattva
this
vow.
Bodhisattva vows. And is that what these first 5 lay precepts are about, or is that kind of the whole tamale that is the
You had to bring up tamales, didn't you?
So
You
I just wondered if you could.
Hang on, I'm on the tamales. We'll come back to your question later.
So,
I'm having
well,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So is
All
there
right.
a distinction for kind of stepwise or stage-wise that one is have vows of of a bodhisattva or
Yes.
moving on to the more? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And technically, to take bodhisattva vows, you will have taken refuge vows. And then refuge vows are the 5. And then bodhisattva vows would be another level. So generally, the 4 sort of main types of vows, and there's more, but there are just the refuge vows, bodhisattva vows. Monastics have their vows, and then there's Vajrayana or tantric vows that you take when you take an initiation, which is like you got to be a super good person, and so those are pretty high, and so they get a little more challenging as you move up the ladder there.
So these are these 5 that we're talking about tonight are the refuge vows.
Refuge vows, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Which, okay.
That people often do, and they formally commit to being a Buddhist.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And again, vows are something that we aspire to. They're something we try to maintain. We might take them, and you might, believe it or not, actually lie even after you committed them. It could happen. But we're actively cultivating an attitude of honesty and not lying. And then, so it's not like you nail it. It's like I'm making this commitment and I'm cultivating these in my heart and mind and engaging them as best I can. Yeah, no getting struck down by lightning kind of stuff. It's just, what I'm cultivating, and then it helps, give that extra push. But they're to be, held. really is important. Yeah, they make a big difference.
Hey, John.
All right, Dawn, and then I think Laura said Maureen. Yeah, Dawn.
Hi. Did I hear you say that
Oh,
one of the vows is to not have sex outside marriage?
no, with somebody else's partner or
Okay,
outside of your marriage, if you're
got
married.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I was gonna
Okay,
run into
everybody's
some
breathing
problems
again
there.
now. Thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you cleared that. I mean, outside of your marriage or somebody else's. Yeah, that's somebody else's partner if you're committed, that kind of thing. Generally be honest and authentic and don't harm in those encounters. There's no worry about what type of partner you're going to have or any of that. But yeah, no kids, nothing that's harmful. But you can, whatever partner, as long as you're adults, authentic, honest, yeah, it's all good. Oh, Mo, were you going to say something? You got to unmute there, Mo.
Yep, I got a quick little comment. I'm so glad I was able to come on tonight. It's been a great, with the vows, I like the, some different schools have ways of putting them, but they all come to the same. And one time, sometimes I like to say, I will try to refrain from lying. Just to reframe instead of, I will not. That's not how they're put for sure, but I will refrain from harmful speech, or I will refrain from, of course, I don't cheat on my husband. That's just blank out, but I like the idea I will refrain from, and it's an act. I sometimes I like that reframing for a little bit. When I took them, I didn't, mine weren't, I will refrain, but to use that term is, it, it puts it really in context for me in the human form and working with others in the households and in the world, so. But thank you for all your lovely comments. It's been very, very good teachings tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Good to see you.
I'll be seeing you next week.
Right, a week from tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. California time. All right, everybody's ready to go be virtuous. All right, that's good. Yeah, well, it's probably a good place to. Let me just double check. I think that's the end of that. Let me pop this up. Conclusion. They just summarize. Ethical conduct brings many benefits, both now and in the future, both for yourself and for others. Being careless about ethics or neglecting it altogether leads to numerous problems for yourself and others in the short term and long term. If you feel so inspired, set the determination to practice ethics as best you can by avoiding the 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues, and perhaps even taking some of the 5 lay precepts. See how I should put that? Some. Remember that with good ethics, your mind will be more calm, subdued, and able to concentrate. With good concentration, you can attain the wisdom, realizing emptiness and eliminate ignorance and samsara, thus freeing yourself from all suffering forever. So, they're just layering it. Ethics, then concentration, wisdom, like they all ripen, they're all intertwined. As we talked about last week, as we have a little wisdom, it's easier to be ethical, and to have better concentration allows you to be more ethical and cultivate wisdom. More ethical, it's easier to concentrate, remember what's important, apply the wisdom. They all really work together. But the foundation, without the ethics, none of the other things work well at all. Yeah. I'm just calling to mind some experiences I've had with really knowledgeable Buddhist practitioners who have the shortest fuse on earth, you know. But they're trying so hard, man. They're just really trying hard. They really dedicate. They meditate and they do that. But man, they can get pissed off and nothing flat. You know? And you sit here, well, let's open the heart, and then these things. And so it's just so important to have that compassion, that care. They're ethical. It's just the compassion, the love. Yeah. All right. So having said that, we'll go on to dedication. Pull that up, and those who care to join in with dedication. We're just taking the time to dedicate this time and energy, merit of our lifetime, for the benefit of others. That cultivations of merit and wisdom that we bring into our hearts and minds, that we bring into the world, that it finds its way out to others. It is beneficial to them, and it's really storing it into our own capacity to continue to grow and to water and ripen the seeds of our own growth. And so those who care to, that motivation that we utilize our efforts, our time, our energy and merits for the benefit of others and for our own continued spiritual growth. Those who care to can join me. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sin. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.